Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas. This is how to make a first-person shooter in Unity, and welcome to episode 29. So this time we're going to look at some more environmental features. We're going to look at a door that we can use on our abandoned buildings. So we'll be doing a different style door in a different language than what we previously did earlier in the series. And we'll also look at putting a skybox into our game, as well as animating that skybox to make it look a little bit more realistic. So we're going to start with the skybox for this tutorial, and we're going to head to the asset store. So hold control, press number 9 on our keyboard, and that will take us to the asset store. Now I've already gone ahead and downloaded a skybox which I feel suits our game quite well, but it is entirely up to you what you want to do. So if you go to the asset store and simply type skybox, hit enter or return, whichever. And I've gone for free only because, as I always say, everything we make here can be made for free. And you have plenty of options that you can choose from. Now, there's some fantastic assets available here, and I do recommend having a look through and see what you think suits your game. I've gone with this one, World Skies Free, because I feel for what we're aiming for here, this one suits it quite well. So all you would need to do is click import, download, and then you'd get the extra screen I should say, to import again. So I'm going to close that now because I've already gone ahead and got it right here. And you can see this is what we're going to use for the skybox. So if we go to Window, Lighting and Settings, we can select our skybox here. So if we click the little button here, and it's called Sky_Matte. So if we search for that, Sky, and there we go, we can see it right there. So click it, click the X, and click the X again, and let's press play. And we can see, there we go, we have a nice fitting skybox for what we're aiming for here. Now, what I'm going to do now is create a little script which will give a little bit of animation to the skybox, which I fancy to be quite nice. At the end of the day, you don't have to have the skybox moving, you don't have to have that kind of stuff, but I think it just adds that little extra to the game. So in our scripts folder, let's right click, create, and we want a C# script, and let's just call it Sky Rotation. And we'll open it up in Visual Studio. And all we really need to do for this is let's get rid of start and any notes. We don't need them right now because we're going to do this all in update. So I'm going to use a variable, even though we technically don't really need to, but I like to have it because we can always change it in the inspect panel. And it's going to be a float. So public float, let's call it rotate speed. And let's make it default equal to 0.5. And don't forget the F at the end because this is C#. And in void update, what we need to do is access the render settings, i.e. make the thing render, because we're going to rotate it. So render settings dot skybox, and skybox is lowercase there, dot set float, and that's capital S, capital F. And in brackets, we need to state underscore rotation. And we need to do time dot time because we need to make it relative to our actual time frame. So i.e., for example, if we sped up time, the rotation would still be relative to the game itself, as long as we multiply it by the rotate speed. Now, this is what I mean. We don't have to necessarily use a variable here. We could have literally typed 0.5f, but like I say, if we want to access it in the inspector panel, that's why we have it here. So close bracket, semicolon, and save. So this is basically just rendering the skybox at a rotation relative to the time in the game multiplied by the rotate speed. So the lower the rotate speed, the slower it rotates. The higher the rotate speed, the faster it rotates. So if we head back to Unity and we add a new game object, and I'm just going to rename this Sky Object, and I'm just going to drag and drop the rotate sky onto that object if I can find it. Sky rotation, there we go. Don't need to set any variables because it's already set. And we should hopefully see the sky moving, even if it is ever so slowly. So it just gives that little bit more realism to our game. So I think at times, depending on your lighting, a skybox can make or break how it looks. You may need to play around with the lighting. A good example of what I mean by that is if we turn the camera around and have a look at this here. It just looks a little bit out of character for what we're doing. So even if we went to directional light and turned it off, it would still not have too much of an impact. If we go to window, go to lighting, go to settings, it still may not have the impact that we want here. So one thing to work with is if we click on the object itself and go down here, let's change the source to albedo alpha and change the smoothness down. So you can see that it's giving it a little bit more, well, I should say a little bit less glow than it would need. So it's up to you how you want to work with these settings. You could also change it to be a bit darker here. You can see how this is reacting to whatever we're doing with the light with the albedo color. So it's worth playing around with these just to get the right kind of setting. But for now, as it stands, it doesn't look too bad as it is. So next thing, let's work on a door. So I'm going to head over to our abandoned buildings over here. And I want to put a door just here, but I want to make it a little bit more relative to the game rather than that sliding door that we did quite a number of episodes ago. Obviously, because we're working with C# now, we also need to rewrite that script because we can't use the same one. So what we'll do is we'll bring in a door. So I'm going to go to our objects folder and I'm going to drag and drop this door straight into Unity, and you can get it on the website for free. Head over there, downloads and assets, first person shooter series, and you can download it there under episode 29. So let's bring this into our game, and we're going to use this FBX file. So let's bring it here, and we obviously need to increase it. So let's just check our scale. Excuse me. So let's increase it to 100 by 100 by 100, and that's clearly too much. I think it's 50, 50, 50, still too much. So I think depending on however your game is with these buildings, if you got them large, if you got them small, work with it and change what you need to here. We may need to reduce even more. So I think what we'll do, let's quickly add our material. Well, we've not got materials yet for this, have we? The textures. So let's just drag and drop the textures onto each. So pcube2 will be the door, pcube1 will be the door frame. So we can see how much of an impact this is having here. So the door frame needs to kind of meld, is that the right word, with the outline here. But let's take a look from the inside. You can see, yeah, it's kind of nearly there. We just need to reduce. So let's take the door itself and let's try and bring this a little bit closer. So maybe there. I think it's more on the Z axis we need to change this. So it's just a case of getting it just right. So let's try 35. Okay. I think that may just do it. Yep. Okay, that looks spot on. Now, what we're going to do here is we're not necessarily going to use this pcube2 as the main door. What we're going to do is add in an extra cube, and that extra cube is going to be, think of it as a hinge. So, right click, 3D object, cube, and let's bring this cube out of the door. Let's reduce it in size, it does seem a little bit too big. And let's get it into position. When I say into position, we're going to have this as the swinging object. So when this rotates, it also rotates the door. So let's have this as quite thin, but quite tall. So 0.1 by 0.1. And it looks about right there as a hinge, maybe about there. And next thing we need to do is bring in pcube2 into that cube. and then bring cube into door, and right click, rename door hinge. And now hopefully when we rotate over here, we should be able to see that the door opens as we would expect. So next thing, turn off the mesh renderer on the door hinge. And now we need to set an animation. So let's head to our animations folder, click on animation and create one. Let's call this open door anim. And hit save. Let's hit the record button. Make sure we're in frame 0. We're doing 60 frames a second. And I think we're going to do this over the course of maybe 1 second. So at frame 0, we need to set the door, its rotation as it is now. So let's make sure that is 0. Hit enter. Make sure that turns red to say that we're setting this keyframe. So by frame 60, we want to make sure the door has rotated to, let's say, about there. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, that looks fine. And let's hit enter and press the record button again. And what we need to do is on the door, remove the animator. Make sure we're on the door, not the door hinge here, because the default animator has gone to the door rather than the door hinge. So remove component, add component, and we need to type in anim because we need to put animation rather than animator. Now we just need to find that door open, which is we put open door, didn't we? So it's this one. So drag and drop that into there, change the size to 1, hit enter, and again into there. And we now need to change that to legacy. So in our debug menu, up there, click legacy, back to normal, wrap mode once. We don't need the door to keep looping its animation opening all the time. We only need it to occur once. Next thing in our audio, let's bring in this creaky door sound into Unity, straight into there, and let's attach that to our player right here. So world sound effects. This ammo pickup object, let's hold control, press D to duplicate, and let's change it to creaky door, and just drag and drop creaky door onto there. So the final thing we need to do here is kind of rewrite our original door script, and we're going to do it a little bit differently because obviously C# would be different, but we're going to kind of work slightly differently because we're actually going to hover over the door itself to open rather than have a button to press. So let's go to our scripts folder, right click, create C#, and I want to call it creaky door open. So best thing to do here is get rid of notes and start. We don't need them. And we're going to write 4 variables. So we're going to need the distance because we're going to have to reference the player casting script. We need to display on screen that we can open the door. We need to reference the door itself as well as the creaky sound. So public float the distance semicolon. Next one, public game object action display semicolon, public game object the door, and as I said, the creaky sound, public audio source creak sound semicolon. So in void, what we need to do is make the distance equal to our player casting bit. So the distance equals player casting. Now this is where I've fallen over myself. I'm quickly going to note that one out with a double slash because if I recall, our player casting is actually in JavaScript. Now, this is a great example for us to actually use something called PlayerPrefs, which I was going to cover in the next episode. Obviously, we will cover it a little bit more in the next episode. The idea of a player pref is something that we can set at any point anywhere, i.e. we can set it as an integer or a float. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the raycast save to the player pref as well at this point right here. So then our C# script can reference that rather than have to reference the JavaScript. Now originally we should have really done all this in JavaScript, but you know, things change over time, but it's not to worry. In most videos though, I think the C# script does exist in the comments. So what we'll do is PlayerPrefs dot set float, and in brackets let's call it, what can we call it, the casting, and in fact yeah, that should do the casting, and we just need to have in there distance from target, close bracket, semicolon, and save. Let's head back to Unity. So what's happened here is the casting now contains the float distance from target. So if we go to our open creaky door, what we can do is the distance equals PlayerPrefs dot get float, and in brackets and quotes we'll call it the casting, semicolon, and let's save. Just make sure that should be okay. Yep, that seems okay. So the idea here is we're receiving into our C# script a variable which was originally set in a JavaScript. So what we need to do is void on mouse over open close bracket and open curly bracket, and we don't need it private, so we can start right here. And if the distance is less than or equal to about 3, we'll say for now, then do the following. Action display, which is the text to say open door. So we need action, helps us spell it right, action display dot get component text, not text alignment, just text, open close bracket dot text equals open door, semicolon. And now at the top, because we're using that, we need to have using Unity engine dot UI. So we need that in our namespace because we're referencing a text element here. And then action display dot set active true, semicolon. So after that, what we need to do is if the input dot get button is action, which is our E key, then we need to open the door. If input dot get button down is action, then what we need to do is also check if the distance is less than or equal to 3. Now we could do this with the double ampersand here to say an and, but I'll do it as a separate nested if for now. So if the distance less than or equal to 3, then do the following, and we need to firstly disable the collider of this object. So get component in brackets, spiky brackets I should say, box collider dot enabled equals false, semicolon. Action display dot set active, also false because we need to turn it off the screen because the door's opening. And the door dot get component animation dot play, and in brackets and quotes our name of the animation, which was, I believe, let's quickly check it. It should be open door anim. Open door anim. Semicolon at the end. And creak sound dot play. Open close bracket. Close curly bracket. And now we should be able to close that if statement. Close this if statement. Close on mouse over. And then this last one obviously closes the public class. Before we do that though, we also need to have the inverse of on mouse over. We need the on mouse exit for, method being called here as well. On mouse exit. It doesn't need to be private. And action display dot set active false. So now we can head back to Unity. And let's just check that the script would help if we save the script. So back in Unity, just make sure the script is saving. Okay, it looks all good. And on this door, what we can do here is let's add component. And in fact, let's do it on the, should we do it on the door? Or should we do it, see what we'll do. Let us try it a different way. Let's see if we can actually add a box collider to the cube. I'm not 100% sure if that's covering where I would like it to cover. If not, we can actually, now I think about it, that has covered, yeah, it has covered the cube. So I just want to quickly check if we can actually pass through this. I'm not 100% sure if the collider will have covered the entire door here. Okay, so that's perfect. We can't pass through the door. So now let's go to our door and untick play automatically because we don't want that to occur. So let's quickly check that isn't going to animate. Door's still closed. Perfect. So now we need to attach the script to door, or rather PQ2. So script, and it should be, if I can remember what it was called, creaky door open. So it should be this one. Let's try it on there first. So we need to set action display, which is in our canvas. And let's see if I can remember which one it is, guys. So what we'll do, let's have a look. Because I cannot remember which one it is in my infinite wisdom. It might be this one actually, text. I think it is text, isn't it? Yeah, I think it is that one. So let's go to back to our door, wherever it may be. Let's head back to our scene down here. Okay, so I should have looked at this before I went ahead. So let us go on here and let's add text to action display. The door itself, which is going to be the main door, and the creak sound, which is up here, creaky door, onto there, and let's try this out. Let's head over to our little abandoned house, and we should be able to. Perfect. So it's quite bright in here, so I think next episode we're gonna kind of have a little look at bringing this back down. It's a bit too much, isn't it, for the style of game we're kind of aiming for. So next episode, what we're going to look at is a little bit more in the lighting department. We're going to have a look more into PlayerPrefs and how we can actually use them effectively to save stats and stuff. And we'll also look at pausing the game, so maybe have a little bit of a pause menu. So guys, until that next episode, thank you very much for watching.